How does this work? Okay. Okay, my name is Khaled Alwassia. I work for and with Tiqani. We are a training provider. We do a lot of talent development in the automotive sector, but in other sectors as well. And we are a team of automotive professionals. I mean, we have combined well over 120 years in the automotive sector, so we have quite a lot of experience. And we are all globally certified and trained by different manufacturers and different organizations. We're concentrating on Marshall Goldsmith's executive coaching, one of the leaders in the field. We offer certified training. We help organizations with talent assessment. That is not so much in the recruitment phase, but as well when we want to come up with development programs for your teams. So if you have them already and want to see is, are they ready for the next step, how we can develop them, what gaps do they have. And we offer with CDX technical e-learning solutions. Our main office is in the UAE, here in Dubai, and we have representation in Saudi Arabia as the biggest market with Alwassia Management Services. We're working predominantly in the Middle East, Northern Africa, India and Asia. At the moment we are expanding a bit more into Central Africa with Ivory Coast and some other French-speaking countries. Now, if you have worked in the automotive field, at one point I'm sure you had some type of assessment. Did you have any nightmares during the assessments in your area? I'm sure you remember this one from school, college, university, and quite possible as well apprenticeships or other certifications. Now IMI does not want this situation at all. We're talking here about doing things differently. We don't want to scare people off. But as well, something what is happening here, quick read. It's not just about training somebody. Assessment is about as well what they have learned. But what is important is not checking from that approach. Now, IMI allows us to bring a lot of considerations into the assessment situation. I will explain you that from the background of the Jaguar Land Rover apprenticeship program which we started a couple of years ago in Saudi Arabia. The situation was basically we needed to establish a credible and sustainable talent pipeline, because we were relying to 100% of imported labor from India, China and North Africa. And because of Saudization pressures from the government, social corporate responsibility, we had to change this around. We were then looking at where we can start. And there were very little supply of local talent available with automotive background, credible automotive background. So we came to the conclusion we have to basically start from high school and then develop people from there. But with the manufacturer of Jaguar Land Rover, we have as well in-house accreditation programs where they take the people to level 1, 2, 3, 4 and even master technician levels. So our program, what we needed, actually had to sort of sit below to take the guys from high school and then into the first level from the manufacturer certification program. Like for example, when I was growing up in Germany, at the age of 13, 12, I started taking TVs into pieces, my mom's iron I took into part. I've known how to use tools, was walking on the bike, on motorcycles. So when I started my apprenticeship, I was already quite a way there. In the Middle East, we don't have that. There's very often people which have never seen the tools and don't know what to do. So IMI allows us to set the goals exactly where we want to be. Do we want to be at master technician level in our program, or do we want to be an entry level like we wanted in Jaguar Land Rover in Saudi Arabia? Because we wanted to have there a smooth handover from the programs. The other thing what we have to think about is student population. As I mentioned earlier, in Saudi Arabia we don't have grease monkeys or petrol heads, which really want to work full time in that career. Yes, they're grease monkeys, but they take this as a hobby. They have a big, rich, others a bit of racing, but not to the extent to actually open a toolbox and take pride in fixing a car. So we had to create this first. Now, if you take the high school students which consider this type of career, culturally in the Middle East, they would then be sort of considered not successful on the academic side. Because if they would be successful on the academic side, they would go to colleges and to university. So we need to consider here as well, what are their learning motivations and their learning abilities. Because if we set up a program which does not fit this student group, we're not going to be successful. We have to adjust it to those people. IMI as well allows us to apply processes. In the Middle East, it is very difficult to get 3 or 4 or 5 different entities together to agree on one set of processes. With the Jaguar Land Rover program, we had, of course, the dealership. We had the Technical Vocational Training Corporation from the government, which was sort of running it from the government side. We had the Human Resource Development Fund, which was paying quite a big part for the program. But we had to as well get the Jaguar Land Rover Middle East office on board, that they supported and say, yes, tick, that is fine. But we had to as well get the Jaguar Land Rover home office in the UK on board to support this. On top of this, of course, the IMI had to say, yes, this is okay with us, because they have their processes. Now the advantage using the IMI is, because they are over 80 years old, they are very respected in the world. Everybody can agree that their processes, that their process requirements is a common denominator. So everybody can sort of say, yes, this is what IMI wants, we can go along with that. So here's a process framework that is very, very important to then say, how do we assess, how do we record it, how do we prepare it, how do we make sure later on, if a quality control a person comes in, how we can present from training, pre-testing and final assessing the person. Employers' engagement. In Saudi Arabia, one of the big problems, similar like in the other countries in the region, is about retention of staff. In some dealerships, they had, where they started training initiatives for young Saudis, youth, they had as much of 60% losses in the first 6 months. So, as from a dealership point, from a management point, from the finance point, it is very important that we come up with a system where the students are engaged, that they see we can remain with this one. It's sort of keeping the motivation that they have a career going on over the next few years. I mean, if you look, for example, Germany or the UK, their dropout rates in apprenticeship programs is about the 30 to 35% mark. So you always are going to have dropouts, but not quite as high as presently in Saudi Arabia, with 60% and more. If you have a program like this and you introduce it to your workshops, one of the big problems is that you have foreign team leaders, foreign senior technicians, which are then supposed to teach the local youth. That automatically brings attention into the mentoring and coaching relationship, because the foreigner thinks, why shall I teach him so in 2 years he can take my job? So there is a lot of things there which can really harm this. But if you bring the IMI in, you have then the option not only to offer something to the apprentice, but you can as well offer something to the senior technician. Because if you set up the program, you're not setting up an apprenticeship program, you can set the same thing up to master technician level. So if I offer you can be a level 3 diagnostic technician, UK officially certified. Now suddenly you have a reason to take care about the apprentice. And if you see that the market is expanding, there's more on-the-job training going on, then your level 3 certification, which includes taking care of apprentices, becomes more valuable. That means your job security is there. Even if you want to go back home to your country, you walk into any dealership and say, this is what I have. Basically, you create motivation in the team that the apprentices are taken care of. The other part of employer engagement is management and finance. The IMI provides you with a framework to measure process. Where are we? You're not just opening a program and then not measure anything anymore. With the assessment layout and framework from the IMI, you're then able to measure progression. You can say that one gentleman is on target where we want to be, that one person is a little bit at front, or this guy is severely behind. So you can immediately do corrective actions. What do we need to do to get him back on track? So it's no surprise suddenly the guy is, oh, he cannot pass, he has to drop out. So you can take very early corrective measurements to protect your investment in the person, to make sure he will graduate and be able to join your team at the end at the required level. Facilities and equipment. IMI allows you the flexibility to mirror your workshops in your training facilities. If you work, for example, for BMW, this will be more advanced. For example, if you work with Geely, there's different requirements on the electronics and the features on the car. And IMI is so flexible that they say, yes, you have to do a session on brakes, but within that session of brakes, you can go from very simple systems to very complicated, like possibly Ferrari or BMW, what they're using at the moment. So you can really adjust this to yourself. They do not require that you invest millions and millions and millions in your training facilities, as long as people have the access, for example, in the workshop. So that is the other advantage with IMI, that you have classroom concentrated courses, you have training workshop where they can simulate the repairs, but as well you have the possibility to go inside the workshop on the job and then work with a senior technician on a customer car. That counts there as well as a nice training program. As I mentioned earlier, your team, all of your team members are important when you come up with an IMI program. I mentioned the team leaders before, but it's as well who is going to do the assessments, who are going to be the trainers. IMI has their very set requirements who can do assessments within their framework. Some people may look at this as a disadvantage because they're very rigid, but it is actually a positive, because you can use this then with the finance and upper management says that, look, this is a minimum requirement, this has to be done. So if assessor 1, assessor 2, assessor 3 is doing different assessment, they will be done to the same level in the same fashion. There are no spikes. And IMI, because this is one of the requirements if you want to be an assessment center, that you have qualified assessors and qualified trainers. They can provide you, like what we did with Jaguar Land Rover. We contacted Nottingham College, which is one of the biggest IMI apprentice centers in the UK. They have sent over an assessor trainer. He was with us for 1 week, and our team, the trainers and as well the assessors, got firstly the basic level teacher certification in the UK, which was focusing a bit on how to train, but as well as was focusing quite strongly how to record what you have trained. Because we always have to consider, if we have 5 major stakeholders, 2 government agencies, 2 agents from the manufacturers, somebody will come and say, show me what you have done. Show me that what I have paid to you to treat these people has been used rightly. So you have to have the process as well, how to document this, how to make sure you can present it to anyone asking. Otherwise you're going to be in a situation that the guy says, hey, sorry, I'm not supporting you anymore. Or if it's with government, guys, please give me my money back. You don't want to get there. So documenting the training efforts is very important. And then the second week was the assessor training, the proper IMI UK-based certification. Again here, we went through the different type of assessments, we simulated them, practical assessments, anything with an automotive program, what type of assessment you're going to do. We went through, we looked at the pros and cons, how you can design them and how you can make sure they are consistent over a 2-year apprentice program. Because you don't want that one assessor is very hard and the other assessor is very difficult. Because sometimes you fail an assessment and you have to retake it possibly with a different assessors. We want consistency is there, very, very important. And as well, the trainer and assessor certifications is something you can give to your team leaders in the workshop. Because IMI, or any program like the IMI, is very much focused on the job training. So it's not just you learn at the days in the college. No, you have to work as well in the workshop and use this in a training thing. Now they're the team leaders. If you certify them as an on-the-job trainer, as an on-the-job assessor, which can take responsibility and sign things off, again, this is basically motivating the team to buy in and support this. There's something in for them. Again, something which is transferable to any job they take into the future. Okay. Method mix. IMI believes in a holistic assessment process. So it's not just you do today multiple choice questions, pass, fail, black, white. They're not interested in that. IMI believes you're an individual, you should be given different options on how to prove your knowledge. Say for example, like me, I am having problems with reading. What is the term in English? I forgot now the right term. It's basically they can't really comprehend what is written, or you mix up numbers. If you have anyone who's handicapped like this, giving him a multiple choice exam is not really fair. Because his reading capability later on as a repairing technician is not that important. So IMI then gives you the flexibility to make it an oral exam. Or say, okay, you can't read this, show me on the car. So you get many different options in how to verify that the gentleman actually has understood. And the aim is not confirming knowledge. The aim is, can he do this on a car safely? And there are many different ways of achieving this. Yeah? Of course, there's always a place for multiple choice, possible essay questions which somebody has to answer. There's choice for observing, like in the Jaguar program, our final exam was to do a complete nature service, A to Z. From verifying what recalls are there, any service actions, getting the spare parts, writing everything up, and really doing the whole job by itself. That was the final exam. There was no writing included, except writing on the back of the job card what you actually have done. So this was really an assessment how it would be done in the service center. The advantage here is, if you assess in that way, the service manager, which have to decide, do I want to have him in the workshop? Do I want to give him a work bay, which another guy makes me money with? So if we can tell the service manager, that gentleman can do a full service independently by himself, there's no reason not to give that apprentice or two apprentices together a work bay and then try to generate revenue. The other assessment form IMI is very much favoring is discussions. You basically bring a group of students together and they with themselves talk about a subject. And the assessor basically listens to what is going on. Because then you encourage learning from each other, not just in the classroom, but as well later on in the workshop. Another thing which a lot of assessors are using are projects. This is where how you can, for example, if you have a training center, this is how you can improve your equipment. You can have an old engine out of the warranty room. You say, okay guys, for the next months, you will turn this into a training engine. But nicely understand, nicely painted, pistons differently colored, painted that you can organize it. And this one basically teaches them how to use different materials, the drilling, the filing, bolting things together. So it's not just about electronics or fixing engine itself, it's as well the capabilities and skills around this. And of course, witness testimony, where the manager can basically say, yes, I have seen him do this brakes, and he did this to a perfect job. Or he assisted that gentleman removing the cylinder head, cleaning everything. That skill was done nicely. Because in the IMI, it's not really he overhauled an engine or he replaced a cylinder head. It's as well the sub-steps in order to achieve the big job are listed down. So what is then possible that, okay, you removed and installed the cylinder head, but there are one or two aspects on this you did not do really 100%. So you can get a sign off of 5 or 6 items, but 2 is then said, please, next time when you do that job, ask me to come and have a look at it again, because here there is some development need. In the automotive sector, simulations as assessment are a big thing, of course. What I always was fond of, making a fault in a car and then having the technicians or aspiring technicians trying to find it. Like for example with the lighting system. You can take a rally, open the internal, put a bit of paper in, put it back in. Something very simple, non-destructive, but they can then use their skills with the multimeter to find the defective relay. So simulations are very important because it's basically something a customer could complain of and brings his car to the workshop, which this gentleman then have to find. Internal quality assurance. Within the Jaguar Land Rover program, internal quality assurance was really, really, really important because we had 5 different stakeholders which all had their own agenda, their own priorities, how to justify to their higher ups that they invested in the program. So internal quality control is really important. The why is clear. Anyone who gives money inside wants to have a bit of a chill pill to make sure, yes, that is the right decision to support this. So quality, internal quality assurance level 1 or stage 1 is basically establishing, maintaining procedures, and as well the assessor training. It's basically build the foundation, all the processes, how you record things for the instructors and assessors, but as well accessible to the students, that they know what's going on, and your stakeholders. Stage 2 is then sampling assessments. That's basically where somebody with more experience, possibly internal verifier qualification, goes then into the system and observes what is the assessor doing during an assessment. How is it recorded? How is he treating the student? How the student reacts? Talking to the students as well. How did you feel about it? And really comes up with a good review of the assessment process. Stage 3 is then sitting down with the assessor and discussing how effective was the assessment. Because like we saw in the, earlier in the cartoon, I can train you, I can assess you, but if that does not result in learning, which I can use later on to fix customer cars, the whole process is useless. It's about the assessments, different styles, and here emotional intelligence, one of the big buzzwords in management comes in as well. It's just, people are different. If I go to a test, big one, I freeze and I panic. This is when I did my MBA. I chose a university where there were no tests. They let me write huge essays and I do like 5,000 words a week, but there were no assessments. It was assessments made for me. So when we deal with students, and we know that they are academically not very successful, then we cannot recreate that school assessment environment. You have people which are very good with words, maybe good at reading and remembering, but they may not so good with their hands and practical. So you really have to bring this down to an individual level, because it's not a case of I want to pass or fail you. What I as an assessor want is, I want to verify that you in the workshop are able to do this job to a level that the customer is happy to pay for it. That is the criteria. Would I let you lose on the general public? So here we have to evaluate the effectiveness of the assessments and the procedures. And then stage 4 is assessor development plans. It is one thing to review things and come up, okay, we need to do better, but then we have to have as well different plans. We have to implement that and really change these things. Okay, does anyone have any questions on the subject? No questions whatsoever. Okay, who didn't take automotive technical education in the group? I know you did. Can you tell me about the assessments which were done?
I didn't do technical.
You did not? What did you do?
Nothing.
Sorry?
It was more of management.
More management. Okay. Looking back today, are you happy with the assessments which were done?
In a way, yeah. But again, it depends on the organization that you work for. So if they encourage the idea of assessing and have an assessment plan in place and an assessment methodology, then yes, you would see where you're going. But if not, then you just do it yourself and you're making sure that the learners are